Designed specifically to send men to the moon and return them safely to Earth, the Apollo program in 1966 was considered the largest scientific and technological undertaking in history. Launched by the three-stage Saturn V rocket, the 3,000-ton mechanism produced 7.5 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. The Apollo spacecraft was composed of three sections: the command module, the service module, and the lunar module. In total, it could carry 3 men to the moon and back, with room to spare for collectibles from the lunar surface. No longer was the ability to land a man on the moon just a dream or even a distant possibility. It was a conspicuous reality, and the Apollo program was going to bring it to fruition. To the astronauts, Apollo was the reward for so many years of hard work, dedication, and patience. While there were new experiences to be had with Apollo, much of what the astronauts were required to do was, in some ways, old hat. Pre-flight tests and checks were all things they had done in some way, shape, or form with Mercury and Gemini. And while each of the program missions had experienced setbacks, nothing could prepare them for what happened on January 27, 1967. 3 weeks prior to a scheduled liftoff from the Kennedy Space Center, astronauts Virgil Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee were seated inside their Apollo capsule performing some routine checks. The plan was to go through an entire countdown sequence. A few minor problems delayed the scheduled tests by more than 4 hours. Then at 6:31 p.m., one of the astronauts said to the command center, "Fire! I smell fire." Just 2 seconds later, astronaut White was reported to say, "Fire in the cockpit." Because it was filled with pure oxygen, in a matter of just a few more seconds, a raging fire engulfed the command module cockpit. Due to its intricate design, the escape hatch could not be opened immediately. The severe heat kept technicians on the outside of the module at bay for nearly 5 minutes before they could get the hatch open. By that time, Grissom, White, and Chaffee were dead. It's estimated that they perished within 30 seconds after the fire started from smoke inhalation and severe burns. The nation mourned. NASA was in shock. And the Apollo program was put on hold for nearly 20 months as a meticulous investigation took place to establish the cause of the tragedy. It was determined that sparks from a short under Grissom's seat caused the highly flammable oxygen environment to catch fire and spread in a matter of seconds. There was nothing that anyone could do. Apollo 1, as it was now called, was the space program's first major tragedy. However, the changes made to the Apollo spacecraft as a result of the findings made future missions safer, the spacecraft highly reliable, and trips into outer space nearly routine. Christmas Eve, 1968.
Welcome to the moon, Houston. Thank you.
Apollo 8 carries astronauts Bill Anders, Frank Borman, and Jim Lovell into an orbital flight around the moon. For more than 20 hours, the 3 travelers make observations about the lunar surface. They took pictures, logged flight information, and sent a live television broadcast from their lunar orbit in which they showed pictures of the Earth and Moon seen from the Apollo 8 spacecraft. Lovell said to the awestruck audience back on Earth, "The vast loneliness is awe-inspiring, and it makes you realize just what you have back there on Earth." They ended their live broadcast with the crew taking turns reading from the book of Genesis.
For all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Those were the words heard by millions upon millions of humans as they watched two of their own kind land on the surface of the moon at 4:18 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, July 20th, 1969. 7 hours later, they heard these words spoken by Neil Armstrong, the first person to ever step foot on the surface of another world.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
A lunar module camera provided live television coverage of Armstrong setting foot on the lunar surface.
Okay, it's quite dark here in the shadow and a little hard for me to see that I have good footing. I'll work my way over into the sunlight here without looking directly into the sun. Okay, it's taut now.
Astronaut Buzz Aldrin emerged soon after, setting foot on the lunar surface at 11:16 p.m., while astronaut Mike Collins remained in orbit above the surface of the moon, ready to dock with Armstrong and Aldrin once their surface mission was complete.
I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene.
That's all right, I don't mind a bit. How is the quality of the TV?
Oh, it's beautiful, Mike. It really is.
Oh, geez, that's great. Is the lighting halfway decent?
Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar surface.
Up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar surface. Beautiful, just beautiful.
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you... For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure they too join with Americans in recognizing what an immense feat this is. Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world. And as you talk to us from the Sea of Tranquility, it inspires us to redouble our efforts to bring peace and tranquility to Earth. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one. One in their pride in what you have done, and one in our prayers that you will return safely to Earth.
The surface exploration was finished in just 2.5 hours when the crew re-entered their lunar module. After a lunar ascent, the lunar module docked with the command and service modules piloted by Collins. The crew transferred into the command and service modules and prepared for the flight back to Earth. Traveling at nearly 25,000 miles per hour, Apollo 11 re-entered the Earth's atmosphere and splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean, where they were immediately welcomed as international heroes. The Apollo 11 crew had brought back 47 pounds of lunar surface material ripe for analysis. In exchange for their lunar excavation, the Apollo crew left a plaque on the surface of the moon that simply says, "We came in peace for all mankind." The national aim to land men on the moon and return them safely to Earth had been accomplished. While the rest of the world marveled at the accomplishments of the Apollo 11 astronauts, the Soviets were, for the time being, still operating under a blanket of fierce competition with the United States. On July 13, 1969, the Soviet spacecraft Luna 15 lifted off from Earth, its destination, the surface of the moon. The Russians had secretively timed the robotic mission so that it would land on the moon just as Apollo 11 was blasting off from Earth. However, the Luna 15 spacecraft experienced difficulties and crashed into the moon's surface on July 21, 1969. Had it not failed, the Russian craft would have returned lunar rock and soil samples back to the Earth just hours ahead of the Americans. Even though the Soviets failed, America's contest with the Russian